Some content or topics discussed could trigger a past anxiety or be sensitive or disturbing to listen to or view. Please view and listen with caution.
Welcome back to Walking Tall. Chris Malazewski here with you once again, along with my co-hosts, Dr. Vanetta LaRosa and Mr. Todd Blyleven. I hope, like us, you had such a great time last week. And I know I had such an amazing experience expressing to you folks who we are and what this Walking Tall movement is all about. I know I have a ton of thoughts after last week's episode, and I'll give those shortly. But Todd, how are you feeling after last week? Where are you at within your headspace, and what are you looking forward to this episode?
Good, Chris. I think, number one, I'm just super excited to be a part of this trio and our mission, of Walking Tall. I can't tell you how many times I've been using that phrase, and I know Vanetta's probably going to mention this for sure, but I'm just super excited to continue to just push forward. Again, this is not going to be easy on all of us, Vanetta, yourself, and me, to go down this journey and listening to some of the hard stories that people are going to tell, like I'm going to tell today. But we're doing this for an education reason, right? To educate, to get people to walk tall. So I'm excited. I know you're going to elaborate more on that, Chris. But just, I'm ready for this. Let's go.
I don't know how many times you both have listened to our first episode. Me has been about 15 or 20 with just joy and excitement and criticisms and ways we can help our mission further. But Dr. LaRosa, what about you? Last week was awesome. We've been in contact. How are you feeling after last week? And what are you most excited about this week?
Feeling great. The one thing I said to you right after was, oh, there's so much more I wished I could have said. And you pointed out, hey, we got a lot more of this to do. I'm looking forward, and Walking Tall has become something, like I was sharing with Todd, that has just become part of my routine vocabulary. My son's been going through something, and he's been walking with his head down, and he's been a little, hurt over some things. And I very naturally just said to him, I want you to walk tall, for yourself and for the people who love you.
So awesome.
And it's just something that physically and mentally makes so much sense. And I look forward to sharing a lot more.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And as I was saying, I must have listened to our first episode, double-digit times with just excitement and vision for where we're going to take this Walking Tall movement. But also a level of I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the two folks that I'm surrounded by, in the experiences you both had and the education you both obtained. There's just so many overwhelming feelings that I have through Walking Tall and this podcast and the many other initiatives we have for ourselves. But
Chris, is so mutual. You're both absolutely amazing human beings and dedicated professionals.
Yeah. So, I've sat back and I've thought, well, what is this Walking Tall, and how do we express and share with our listeners, and how do we exemplify Walking Tall, right? I think that's going to be one of our biggest challenges as a unit, is how do we exude through a computer screen or through earbuds, this Walking Tall initiative we have for ourselves and this movement we want to create for the world. So what we're about to hear over the next hour or thereabout is living proof of somebody walking tall for themselves, for Vanetta and I, and for you as a listener. What we alluded to at the end of last week's episode and what we're about to go through here is hearing Todd's story. And it's not easy. Most importantly, for him to tell, it's not easy. And it's also not going to be easy for Dr. LaRosa, myself, or you as a listener to hear. And that's okay. I think that's also part of what this Walking Tall movement is all about, is being, at times, comfortable with being uncomfortable to help others. And that's exactly what Todd's going to be doing for us today, what he's been doing for me for 8 months. And I can't imagine how many others he's been doing for well before I knew him. So before Todd gets into his story, I want to just give the listener a brief insight as to the type of detail that they may be hearing. And this isn't coming from me, or this isn't coming from Todd. This is coming from somebody that reached out to Todd after one of his articles was released, expressing his experience, who he was, all those good things. And as you can imagine, social media being what it is, many people come to recognize your face, Todd, and your story. And then, of course, being as accessible as humans as we are now with social media, Facebook, all those things, you're getting messages. So one of the messages Todd happened to share to me, and these are the types of details we're going to hear from him, is a simple message of, before getting to us, you approached unresponsive bodies. When I was running to the cab, I looked at the bodies, and you had stopped to ask if they were okay. And they had blood, which explains why they didn't respond to you. And Todd's response was, there were so many down. And the response to that was, your clothes matches what I remember, and so does your body frame. That snippet alone for me is making my heart beat excessively fast and my breath to get lost. And I can't imagine, Todd, what you're going to be feeling as you express these details and this experience you've had. But what I want to say before I turn it over to you, Todd, these experiences, while horrific and unimaginable, don't define you. Just like my experience doesn't define me. And Vanetta, your experiences don't define you. And your son's current experiences won't define him. But what does define you, Todd, if I may, and who our listeners should know who you are, comes from your own words. And this came via text to me on July 7th, 2022 at 2:13 p.m. I had no idea who you were or that you even existed. And you introduced yourself to me as you're about to introduce yourself to the listeners and the world in this fashion. Hello, Chris. Ryan Brownlee gave me your number. First of all, I'm glad you and your family are okay. My name is Todd Blyleven, and my family and I survived the Las Vegas mass shooting on October 1st, 2017. And I know what you are going through. When I returned home to Dallas from Vegas the next day, I had a lot of people reach out to me, one being a Navy SEAL and other friends from law enforcement and fire. I am here for you, bud. I was able to find an amazing therapist with specialized in EMDR therapy, which really helped me understand things more and process what I had just been through. Please call me to talk if you like. You will need a group of people, or maybe like me, a select few of individuals that have been through an experience like what you have just went through to help you and just be there to listen to you. I'm happy you are safe and alive and have been praying for all those affected. I'm here, Todd Blyleven. There is not a better way to announce you, Todd. This is exactly who you are. This is exactly who we want to be. And this is exactly what Walking Tall is all about. So welcome back. And I can't say we're excited to hear your story, but I'm honored that you're willing to share it with us.
Thank you, Chris. Man, that's hard. Just to listen to, the first text puts you back into the moment, and then to listen to the text that I sent you. And I know that was very, very, very difficult for you to read. And are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I think that's the part of this, right? It's why we can't do this on our own. It's why you can't fight this on your own. You have to be able to have community. You have to have people that you can, be around and talk to and have support. And so I'm really honored that I was able to reach out to you, and I am so thankful that you reached back out to me. I've seen your growth, and I know we're going to get into your story next week. And we're going to talk about some hard things that you went through, and you're an absolute hero in my heart, in my mind. And just, you stood up and you persevered and you kept your boots moving forward. And that's all I tried to do on the night of October 1st, 2017 in Las Vegas for others. So it's what we do, right? And
We are.
Mind you, it's number one, first priority in an event of such tragedy. You have to take care of yourself, right? Whatever that is, hide, run, if needed, fight, right? And if you feel like something is pulling you, that you're okay in a moment of total chaos, where you can then exert enough energy to go back and help others in need, then okay, do that. But if not, run, hide, get away from the danger and take care of yourself and others, because the most important part of that whole piece is being safe, right? In that immediate piece. So I want to make sure that we talk about that just for a brief second, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me that wish they would have gone back and did what they did, or people that would say, you know what, if I was in that situation, I probably would have done the same thing. And it's one thing to think about it that way, but you never, ever really know how you're going to react in a situation of total craziness, and especially one where there's an active shooter in place, right? You never know. You never know. And in my situation, and I'll start talking about it now. The night of October 1st, 2017 started out with a number of drinks and having fun with friends. I was there with my wife, and I always called them, like we call them our nieces and nephews, but there was a group of us, about 18 people total. About 11 or 12 of those were kids that we've known since they were little. I used to teach one of them how to pitch in Little League. And we had gone to the Route 91 Country Harvest Festival, for 3 years, I believe, in a row. I think my wife went, or something the year before, but we had been numerous times, and we had always found ourselves towards the front of the stage. We're always with younger kids, so my wife and I were always the aunt and uncle sort of thing, just partying with the younger kids. Yeah, exactly. And we always had just such a great time. You felt safe going into an event like that. Multiple police around. Las Vegas Police Department always did an amazing job of making people feel safe in that environment. You're talking 26,000 people, outdoor event. So the listeners that are maybe listening on just the audio version of this, outdoor event, food vendors, beautiful stage, VIP area, all these really cool amenities, a typical outdoor festival, right? Country music. I'm a big country guy, so I love country music, but country music's blaring. Everybody's got hats on and boots and having a great time. And we always found ourselves in the same area on the right side of the stage, up towards the middle front. And at the end of the night, the best artists would always come on, and not best, but more high, headliner artists would come on and play for about an hour and a half or so. And my wife and the girls would always go right up against the rail, where they can see the cowboy or whatever, shake their butt and do all these things. And the guys would kick back about 10 feet from us, or from them, and we'd drink our beers and just hang out and watch the ladies have fun and just enjoy the show. And it was just such a great time. I can't, the mental part of that, I think, is really important, because when we go to a concert like that, that's what we're all expecting, right? When we go out with our family and friends, we're expecting to go have a great time somewhere, ball game, a show, dinner, whatever that is. So on that night, we went into that last shows, the third night of the concert, and it was the headliner, Jason Aldean, was on stage, and he starts playing his songs. And we normally, like I said, always went up to the very front of the stage. Well, on this particular night, for whatever reason, we stayed back about 40 feet from the stage or so. And we had this area, all 18 of us were together. And we were dancing, and we had this like open area. It was really odd because it was so crowded, but like we had this area just to ourselves. And we were dancing, and we were just having a great time. And I got done dancing with a girl that I always called my niece. And my wife was there, and, everybody were videoing, and you can see I've got videos that people have shared with me about, just the experience and what happened. And all of a sudden you start to hear popping noise. And you don't know what that is because it could be a speaker, it could be firecrackers, it could be something else. Well, then it's followed by a machine gun fire, and you can hear the crackling through the vibration of the night. And it's loud, but yet where it's coming from, the way that that venue was positioned, there were these brick walls, about 7-foot tall brick walls that separated the venue from Las Vegas Strip Boulevard and a couple of the other main streets. So it sounded like maybe it was on the other side of the wall happening towards Mandalay Bay. And maybe it was a drive-by. Maybe somebody was just shooting off a gun or whatever it was. But you looked around real quick, you're vigilant, trying to identify things. Law enforcement's right to your right. You see 3 cops wearing, the yellow vests and things, and they're now on their walkies, but you're okay. And the music's still going on. So you feel like you're still safe. And then all of a sudden you start to hear screams. And then you start to see people fall. And now the second barrage is starting to happen. And now it gets real because it's coming at you. And so everybody goes down. And I'm down on one knee. My wife is in front of me. My brother-in-law, all the kids, everybody's down. And there's gunfire coming at us. So I quickly looked to my right. I identified a muzzle flash in the upper portion of Mandalay Bay, knew we were getting fired upon on an elevated position with no cover. So I told everybody, let's go, get up, run. So I grabbed my wife, everybody got up and we ran. And I wanted to run away from the gunfire and try to create as much distance as possible from the muzzle of that weapon to where we were going to be going. So I got us we ran about probably 40 yards to a Budweiser booth. And I can't tell you, I still feel it almost daily. When you start to run and you don't know what's behind you and something is, that a weapon is being fired at you and you could die at any moment. When your boot lifts off the ground and as it's starting to come down, all you're praying is step by step that your boot touches the ground and you can feel it touch. And all you're trying to do is create that distance as fast as possible and protect. So I had my wife, my brother-in-law, but more importantly, my wife, and I tried running as big as I could around her to become the shield that if, God forbid, a bullet did come in our direction, that I was struck and not her. And so you finally get to where your end goal is try to get to safety, some sort of coverage. And we got to coverage really quick. The second round was still bursting. And it stopped. I identified about 15 feet to my left, there was an open gate with squad cars there because this concert, it was all for parking control. So that was going to be an exit point to another parking area on the east side of the venue. So I told, let's get up. We jumped up immediately. We ran to the squad car. That's safe. Then I saw 4 more squad cars north of the location, about 100 yards down the street. We're on Giles Street right now, which is east of the venue. So I said, get up, let's go. So we were there for 2 seconds, jumped up, and we started to run. And that's when I saw a guy carrying a girl out that had been shot. So I ran over real quick. He was carrying her like a pair of scissors. And I grabbed her other arm and her boot, and she was gone. And we laid her down, and this all happened so fast. And I laid her down, and I don't know what it was, maybe the touch of her hand, the touch of her wrist, knowing that this poor innocent girl, her life was gone. I ran back to my wife, my brother-in-law and his wife, and I knew I had to do something. And so I knew that Joe, my brother-in-law, was capable of taking off. And so I sent them away. I told my wife, I've got to go back in. And I gave her a kiss. I told her I love her and I promise I'll be safe. And I watched them turn around and run away, and I ran back into the venue. This was right before the third round had really started.
Can I ask you a question quick? What was your wife's response to that?
She was dazed. I
Mhm.
think, I think she probably knew that's who I am as a person. I don't think she was completely surprised, but she was dazed, obviously, like, what, you're going to go where?
Mhm.
But she went with Joe. She trusted my judgment, and Joe was perfectly capable of taking care of them. Now, mind you, there was a lot of political stuff going on around this time.
Mhm.
We thought we were under attack. I saw the single shooter, but as you're running, you're hearing audio making it seem like there's multiple shooters inside the venue. So you don't know where all this is coming from. So I wanted them to get as far away as possible. I told Joe, keep running north. I'll find you after all this is over. Just find a place to be safe. That was the battle part of it. But Joe looked confident in what he was going to be able to do. They obviously didn't want me to go back in, but it was, Chris, it was an instant. I wasn't going to take no for an answer. And I watched them run. It was a quick kiss and an embrace, and I went back in. When I went back in, the first woman that I had come up upon was an elderly, kind of older woman, and she had been shot and she was limping out. And I don't know why she was by herself, but I quickly ran in. This was about 15 feet as I run through the gates of Gile back into the venue. And I grabbed her and took her to the squad car. I figured that was going to be my spot. I'm going to go in, I'm going to grab people, and I'm going to take them to that squad car. As soon as I set her down and I got back up, a wave of people started running out that same exit point. And one woman, little 5 foot nothing, blonde hair, lady probably in her mid 40s or so, turns to me and says, she grabs me on the right side of my shirt as I'm getting ready to go back in. She goes, I'm a trained ER nurse. What can I do to help? So she instantly identified, there weren't any law enforcement around, mind you. Everybody was probably scattered trying to find these shooters or shooter. So she quickly identified that I was somebody going in to grab somebody else and bring them out. What can she do to help? I said, ma'am, put your hands on those people right there. There were already 3 people down by the squad car. And I believe either a security guard or maybe an officer that had been shot in the foot. There was somebody in uniform that had been shot in the foot. And so I ran back in, and this is where, like, Vanetta, this is where my mind started to get a little hazy on what my story, my vision in terms of remembrance, what that really looked like. And through EMDR therapy and through a lot of different people reaching out to me and accounting for my actions and giving me timelines of what I did that night, which validated in my own mind what I remember. I ran back in, and there was a girl that had been shot on the other side of, somebody had thrown her on the other side of that same Budweiser booth that we ran to after the initial first rounds of fire. And she had been shot twice. And so I ran into the venue searching for a nurse, an EMT, and I'm screaming for EMT, medic, doctor, somebody. A brave woman came out from her hiding, came with me, and I was able to put her on the other side of the Budweiser booth and the other side of the counter, and she was able to work on this victim. Around the 4th round or so is when and there's video of me somebody was videoing themselves through that ordeal and happened to have me catch me in doing this act. And then it shows me run off into the venue, and then the fourth barrage of burst starts happening again. I think this is when I, like your text says, this is when the three girls or two girls that were carrying out a third saw me come around the corner and started. I was more in towards the middle part of the venue, I believe at the time, and started searching for people that needed help. And unfortunately, there were a few that were non-responsive. And that's where I found Rachel Parker, which was a Manhattan Beach county clerk, working for the police department. And she was being carried out by her two friends, or dragged out. So I went over to them. I was able to get Rachel up and over my shoulder, and I ran her out as quickly as possible. Her two friends following, and I was able to get them into cars were now pulling up, and people were putting victims and injured people into these cars, and people were being transported to hospitals via just regular citizens' vehicles. And so I was able to get Rachel and her two friends into the car really quick. And then another couple jumped in and they were able to take off, and I ran in. And it's hard to remember that, but I'm just moving. My whole mission was to run in. I don't care if I fall, then I fall. I'm going to fall proud. I'm going to fall knowing that I was doing something for the betterment of someone else and just trying to help. And that's all I tried to do, was just keep going back and forth and carrying people out. And when you read text messages like what that person had sent me that night, and then it puts the reality of kind of what actually was happening and what was going on. Unfortunately, Rachel passed away the next morning in the hospital. That was hard. I mean, you're reading somebody's text and they're thanking you for getting them out of that horrible environment. And I'm leaving a text message saying, God, I hope your friend and you are okay. And I think I said, I'm happy that you and your friend are okay. And the next line was, our friend didn't make it, but you need to know that you did everything you could to help her. And she didn't die on a turf floor. And that's hard. It's hard to think, was I fast enough? If I would have just gotten there a little bit quicker, would she have lived? But I know it's not in my hands. And I did everything I could to make sure that she had an opportunity to live. And I'm proud of what I did there. After I got done with Rachel, it was one after another. I carried out a brunette-haired girl that ended up passing away in my arms. I got her to the street, and she passed away while I had her on my left side of my body. I was down on one knee. I had my right arm, my right hand on her stomach. And I looked down and I had my World Series ring on. And I remember, looking at that ring, and here there was a guy that came up and he said, "Sir, do you know who she is?" I said, I don't know who she is. And he said, "She's gone." I said, "I know." And so I laid her down, and as gently as I could. And I remember just looking at that ring, and I turned it the opposite direction, so it was facing inward. I don't know why I did that, but I just, at that moment, that ring always meant so much to me in terms of success and pushing forward. And now all of a sudden there wasn't anything successful about what had just happened in my life and what just happened with this poor girl. And so I got back up and I was so thirsty, and I was crying out for some water. Somebody tossed me a water, and I just poured it all over myself. And I just felt the water just almost cleanse me in a way. And I was able to refocus and then go back. And I started pulling more people out. More people were living, and it was just motivational. It was one after another. The shooting was still going on, and I'm not sure in the time frame on when this happened, but I remember running around the Budweiser booth, and there was a large amount of people that were hiding around fold-up chairs, because you were allowed to bring in fold-up chairs at that event. And I remember, like, there's an exit point on the other side of this Budweiser booth, but nobody knew that. And so I'm standing there like a third base coach, Chris, and I'm rounding people around, telling them, hey, let's go. There's an exit point here, go east and then north, east and then north, east and then north. And go towards Tropicana. And people are starting to come out. And now the gunfire is coming towards me. And you can hear it tinkering off the Budweiser booth. And all I remember is just trying to keep my right boot clamped to the ground and just keep people going, because I didn't want anybody to die. Thankfully, everybody was okay. I was able to get out that pack of a large group of people. Nobody got hit, and I was able to move on. But I mean, it was chaos. You honestly thought that it was a continual round of gunfire for hours. I felt like I was on that floor, on that turf for hours. And essentially I was there for about 2.5 hours, resulted in me carrying out a woman in a wheelbarrow. There was a construction site going on in a parking area on the southeast side of the venue. People were using rails to carry bodies out, like stretchers, and there was a wheelbarrow. And so 2 guys, I helped lifted the wheelbarrow up, and we ran this girl out, and 2 guys were holding it. We carried a girl out on a rail, and we put her in the back of a pickup truck that ended up being it was a Marine that stole this pickup truck, and we ended up taking 10 people or so to the hospital. And it was really amazing. I mean, people at that point, after I think the gunfire had stopped, I thought we were still under attack. I thought we were under attack until 6 o'clock in the morning, mind you. So did everybody else. Just the lack of really communication amongst law enforcement and fire and everybody, just because there was so much mass chaos. 858 people were injured that night. 58 people passed away that night from that gunman. It was crazy chaos everywhere. People were running into casinos that had been shot. And so now those casinos, they're putting out like active shooter inside their casino, because people were shot at the venue, and running down the block half a mile, even a mile, into multiple casinos. So you had police scattered everywhere trying to find multiple shooters off of this one incident. And I remember I laid a person down, and there was an EMT there. And so I got up, and he said, all right, where are we going next? And I said, who are you? And he goes, I've been with you, brother. And he had his shirt off, and he had his EMT belt across his chest. And I said, okay. I said, let's go. He goes, you're going in and carrying them out, and we're fixing them up. And I said, okay. And he had 2 other guys with him that ended up being, I think, a Marine. And then another one was a captain somewhere in the Sacramento area. Mind you, I mean, this is on the West Coast. So you got a lot of people coming from all different states, big country concert. So you had a lot of active military and off-duty PD and firefighters, EMTs, and everybody was there. And so the 4 of us kind of became this little pack. And so we were just pulling people out and helping people where we could. That nurse that originally stopped me ended up managing 3 triage centers on that street of Giles, one being a critical tent, another one being mild, and another one being kind of a medium. But she ended up managing 3 triage centers and really set this whole stage up. But I remember I got down, we brought someone out, and I remember standing up, and it was just one of those moments where you could catch your breath. And then all of a sudden you realize like where you're at and what's happening. And that whole street of Giles was, and I'm not joking at all, it was like the Gone with the Wind episode where you're seeing all the bodies that are laid out over a field. Horrible, horrible situation. And you had all these bodies that were down on the ground, people that were injured on this street. But there were more people on top of them that had come out from their hiding spots that were helping. There was thousands of people that came back to help the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that were injured. So it was very motivational at that time. It was a Molotov cocktail of emotions, is what I've always said. You go from being scared out of your mind, hearing things, and you just got to trust, I'm just going to keep pushing forward. I'm just going to keep my boots moving, to joy because you get someone out and they're okay, to total darkness and sadness when you lose another victim in your arms that night, to you're just reaching for that next bit of hope. And the people that came back, I mean, it's just truly remarkable. The love, unconditional love that was poured out from just like, it didn't matter what color you were, who you voted for, none of that shit mattered. You literally saw people helping people to just try to really survive and live. And that to me was extremely motivational, and it gave me energy. It like boosted my energy even more. So we ended up going from that event. And one thing I had for you, Vanetta, I'd love to learn more as I wrap my story up here, is I remember running around the corner at some point in that evening, and there was a man that was frozen, and he was stopped, and the shooting was still going on. And I said, "You need to get down." And he says, "I can't move. My legs are frozen. I can't move." And he said, I'm a corpsman. And I'm like, okay, this guy's got military experience. Obviously there's something, but it happened super quick. So I grabbed him and I like literally just bear hugged him, and I carried him out to Giles, and I set him down, and I said, "You're a corpsman?" He said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "I don't know what happened." And I said, "You've got a lot of people here that are injured. You're going to get your ass down now, and you're going to help them. And you're going to do what you were trained to do, and you're going to go help those people." And later on, when I came back out 3 or 4 times later, this guy was literally on his knees helping people. And he had just kind of like gone from that frozen state to now like he's this animal doctor person just helping people out. It was absolutely amazing to see in that moment, in the afterthought. But once we got done with being there and things were calming down a little bit, we had heard there was an active shooter at Tropicana now. So the 4 of us, these 3 guys and myself, ran across the parking lot, and there were ambulances being that were loading people up. And that's the first time I had spoken to my wife now. So we're helping people get into these ambulances. It's like an Uber line, right? And there's probably about 150, 200 people outside the backside of Tropicana. We're in where the service, where everybody goes in for the service entrance and stuff. And I'm talking to my wife and just letting her know I'm okay. I still don't know where she's at. And an officer says, "There's a shooter up on the roof. Everybody needs to get inside." So my wife hears that. And I said, "Okay, we're going to get everybody inside." So we get everybody inside into this little service entrance. Everybody's scared out of their mind. We sit everybody down. And then now there's corridors that are stemming off left and right. And you got this long hallway. And we wanted to make sure that the rooms were cleared and that we weren't a sitting duck. So we split up. There was like 4 guys with me and a bunch of other guys. And we start barreling through doors, and ended up being kitchen doors, laundry doors. This is wherever everything gets taken care of, in terms of the laundry and stuff for the hotel. And we're barreling through doors, and I'm hitting it. And now there's like 20 people piled on top of each other, scared out of their minds in a dark corner, and we're waving them out. And so all you're finding is people that are literally scattered from the shooting, and they're finding anywhere they can hide. And they're literally inside these rooms. And so it was good to find them. I ended up reconnecting with one of our friends that was with us that night. She was, I think, grazed by a bullet on her knee. And so I found her, we embraced. I was able to get her to the main corridor and get medical attention. And we actually was able to put her on an ambulance so she could get out. But then this is how crazy it got. Then you're like, there's a guy at the end of the hallway with a knife. And so immediately you jump up, and it's me and these three guys, and we're literally trucking down this. We're passing all these people that are sitting down, leaning up against the wall. And I'm running down this hallway, and it's about 50 yards, and it goes into the underside of Tropicana. And there's this guy wielding this knife. And people are like standing back, and here I am. I'm running at him, wishing I had a baseball or something in my hands to be able to like throw at this son of a bitch or something, right? And I'm coming up on him, and all I can think of, are you a good guy or bad guy? And I start screaming this out: good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy. And he looks at me, and I'm able to just grab his hand and then throw him up against the wall really quick. And I disarm the guy, and it turns out he's just scared out of his mind. And he just was losing himself, and he wasn't a bad guy. He was scared for his life. And that was really kind of towards the end when things started to settle down. As far as the mass chaos of it, right? Law enforcement came in, we saw SWAT for the first time enter. They started pushing everybody into the main convention halls. They brought blankets, they had waters. Me and these other four guys are vigilantly, we're now profiling people, because you don't know what to shoot. You don't know if there was 20 shooters. You don't know if we're in a room and then someone's going to stand up and start shooting again. You have no clue. So we're profiling everybody around. And I probably did 20 or 30 laps around that convention hall, looking at people. My head was absolutely exploding. I laid down at some point. I had probably 4 or 5 waters, some young girls. I had, unfortunately, blood all over my left side where I was carrying people out. My hat had blood on it. My boots were tore up, had blood on it. Just a lot. Obviously, you could tell that I had been there visually. And these really great girls, they asked if I needed something. I said, my head's pounding. They ran off and got me Advil. And then I laid there for a minute, and I got back up. I just couldn't stop. Now, the end of the night for me, or almost the end of the night, I have to go to the bathroom so bad. So I walk out of the hallway, the convention hall, and it's pretty quiet. There's a couple officers to the left. Now this little officer comes through, and he's clearing rooms, and he's got a big old shotgun, right? And so he now is going into the men's bathroom. He said, "You got my 6?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I got your 6. So what am I going to do? Can't throw anything at someone." But he goes in, he clears it out. And I said, "Hey, would you mind standing here while I go to the bathroom?" And he looked me up and down. And he said, "Yes, sir." And I went in, and I went to the restroom, and I remember I still have this feeling of like, when I go into a restroom and there's nobody in there and it's quiet, it takes me back to that one moment in time where I was in there by myself. That's when I first really got scared. That's when I started really like, oh my God, what just happened to me? Now I just want to get back to my wife. Like, I need to get out of here. I need safety. I wanted to be like surrounded by like 20 cops or something. I wanted someone to just grab me and hold me. And I now get to the mirror, and I'm washing my hands, and I see all the blood on me and my face and my neck. And so I'm trying to like wipe stuff off. And I came out and the officer was still standing guard. And then he went into the women's restroom and came out. He asked if I was okay. I said, yes, sir. And then he ran off down the hallway. And I went back in and I waited there for about an hour in the convention hall. And I had 1% battery life on my phone. And I was able to find Kathy. She was about 200 yards to my east in a little motel called Desert Rose. And we were able to connect and kiss around 6 o'clock in the morning. So it was a extremely scary night filled with all kinds of craziness that had happened. The shooting went on for something like 15 minutes. To today, I have never, ever wanted to know anything about that SOB. The person that was behind the weapon, they said that he ended up having like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rounds, tens and 20s of guns and all these things. And it was just nonstop barrage. Unfortunately, 58 victims fell that night. And, 850 plus were injured.
Todd, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I'm really sorry. But that is exactly, there are many ways to walk tall. You walk tall through that night by doing what you did for others physically. And we're going to hear shortly how you walk tall for yourself and your mental health recovery in a little bit. But Dr. LaRosa, can you just comment briefly on how remarkable and how strong Todd has to be able to account for the event as he just did, remain as calm as he just did, and be so articulate in the details? Can you just comment from a brain perspective, if you will, like how impressive that is and how strong Todd has to be able to go through that before we turn it back over to you, Todd, and then we're going to ask you to just share your recovery story and how that has progressed for you. So Dr. LaRosa, if you would.
Yeah, well, before I do, I have to say that was that was tough. Hearing what you went through, it was war, it was terror. And thank you for walking tall and sharing that with us today.
Why don't I talk about my recovery? Yeah, why don't we hear it? Again, and I mentioned, Todd, real quick, like, our movement that we're bringing to the world, right? There's so many ways to walk tall, right? And you just expressed one way from a physical perspective that we all can do so. But what you're about to tell us now is how you, what I'll say is what you told us on October 1st is how you walk tall for others. And now what you're about to tell us is how you're walking tall for yourself. And I think that's just as important for our listeners to hear as it was for me to learn from you. So if you don't mind and you're ready to do so and you can catch your breath, if you want to head into that, but Dr. LaRosa, I'll give you a second here too quick.
Thank you, Chris, for giving me a moment.
Yeah.
Because as I lived through your story, and I knew my voice would crack.
It's okay.
What I experienced several times over were overwhelming emotions, overwhelming sadness. And I try to recompose myself. And my brain is working, my amygdala is working. I'll get into all that. But my attention was fleeting and I was dissociating, and I was trying to regain my composure because I knew that I would be speaking now to our listeners and to you all and trying to say something coherent. But as this was occurring, I developed this pulsating headache. And it wasn't just sitting here grinding my teeth, listening to your story, but it was the experience of the neurophysiology of experiencing overwhelming difficult emotions and then trying to block those emotions out. It takes a physical toll on us. And you asked me a little bit about the neurophysiology of this. And, what I can tell you is that the amygdala, part of our brain, responds to emotions. Fear and anger are two emotions that are most intricately responded to by the amygdala and other brain systems and pathways. But when a person goes through an experience and a trauma such as what you and Chris have, our autonomic nervous systems, broken up into the sympathetic and parasympathetic portions, start to work for us. We've all heard of fight or flight, right?
Mhm.
So when we are faced with a trauma, something that is life-threatening, extremely fearful, any situation or stimulus that we perceive as such, our sympathetic portion of the autonomic nervous system begins to act. So this is where our stored adrenaline is released into our systems to give us that increased energy and strength, if you will, if it's needed. That's where our pupils dilate. We become hypervigilant. The blood towards the surface of our bodies begins to slow down in its flow, preparing our bodies for potential trauma, helping us to survive and bleed to death less slowly. So our bodies have a variety of physiological symptoms that our brain tells it to do when we're faced with a trauma. All of these things are happening to us. We have neurotransmitters involved in activating our muscles, acetylcholine and others, and we have intense fear. So when those expressions, she died of a broken heart, or he was frozen in fear, those are true. So when you speak about the ex-army person that you're talking about, he literally was frozen in fear at that moment, and that could be a psychological response coupled with how his body's reacting to it. And then as we process this, and as we now, it takes, when this happens and all this stuff happens to our body, eventually our bodies have to get back to baseline. And that's where the parasympathetic portion of the autonomic nervous system comes in to help us out and restore us to baseline. But sometimes that when we hear this person died, of a situation like this, sometimes the parasympathetic portion can go into an overreaction, and it could slow your bodily systems and your heart rate to the point where you can actually die. And so most of us have not been through a trauma, even on a subscale of anything that the both of you have gone through. But if we relate it to things that people do experience, a terrible car accident, being accosted or yelled at by someone in the environment, whatever, we know once our bodies go through the circumstance, how we feel afterwards. And it's almost like your body probably can't stop shaking, can't stop crying, you want to sleep, you're drained of energy, and you just feel again, the expression emotionally drained. This is just a simplistic explanation of the neurophysiology and what our brains and bodies go through during something like this. And the perception of it is just as real. So as you relive all of this, you're experiencing this. So
yeah, no, it's thank you for that detailed explanation. And I know I asked, and I'm sure we'll get to it after Todd tells the next part of his journey. And thank you for rerouting us, Dr. LaRosa, and the explanation you provided, and to explain from a scientific medical perspective of how and why Todd was able to do what he did, aside from him being who he actually is as a person, is important, is absolutely important. And so what I want you to think about is Todd's telling us his next part of his story and his mental health journey and his therapy struggles and successes. Think about how remarkable, and maybe if you can comment after Todd's done with this part, how remarkable it is that Todd's been able to piece this situation together, and how strong of an individual and whatever the scientific medical justifications are for him being who he is in terms of strength. So we'll get to you a little bit more about that, but Todd, back to you. Pick it up. You got to kiss Kathy and you got to come home, and What were the next few days, months? We're in over 5 years now, going on 6 years to your journey. Talk us through that. And I know our listeners will appreciate the struggles you encountered and endured, but the successes you recognize, because that's an evidence of you walking tall for yourself. So back to you.
Thank you. It's not easy to tell the story. It's not easy to listen to. And for those that have never been, thankfully, thank God, have never been in that situation that you and I have been in, Chris, it's hard to imagine. And when you put yourself mentally there, it really, it pulls at you, it tugs at you. And, Dr. La Rosa Veneta,
He's never going to call you doctor. You know that.
I know. I'm like, Veneta, it's tough. But it's also something too that we all need to learn from, right? Because people go through a lot. Our military goes through that, when they go over and fight in combat. Our veterans, our grandfathers, our grandmothers, that gave so much to our country, whether it was their lives or their mental health, and their well-being. I walk away from that with an utmost appreciation of what life is now all about, right? And I'm not joking. It's the flowers are just brighter. The air is just more crisp. Everything that is good in our society and our world just seems like it's unbelievably beautiful. And the drama that I used to focus on, sometimes, whether it was giving a pitching lesson or it was something in my past with working too much, trying to figure things out, and the time maybe I lost was spending time with family. Those are the things you get on yourself after you experience something like that, because now I'm like, all right, I'm going to reset. I'm going to refocus. But when I got back, so I'll take it from the airport. So we fly back into Dallas. I'm in absolute shock on what just happened. We're interviewed. There's all kinds of, news stuff going on. Washington Post had already put something out on me. So we get finally into, I'm talking to this sports news company in Minnesota about what had happened. And I finally get in my truck and in the parking lot there at the airport. And I get a phone call from a friend of my dad's that's former military. And he says, "Hey, you don't know me. I know your dad." I knew of his name because my dad and them went on vacation in North Carolina somewhere where he's from. And so I knew of him, but I'd never met him. And so he tells me, I'm former military, this and that. I've done these tours over in the Middle East. I've seen a lot of crap, and I know what you're going through. I want to be here for you. This is what you're going through with your head. He did exactly what I did to you, Chris.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. And he literally knew I was down on the ground, and he tried to help me get up and understand what was going to be in front of me in the next coming months or years of my life, all within one phone call. And it really gave me perspective on, okay, I'm not alone. I'd never really thought about, what I had just really gone through. And his whole thing was, at least I had a gun. You didn't have a weapon. You went in by yourself. You went into harm's way and all these things. And he's saying all these things. And I'm thinking God, was I stupid for doing that? I mean, I got my kids. We're going to go drive to go see my kids right now. I left my wife there. Was that the most stupid thing in the world for me to do that? Why wouldn't I have left and taken care of her? And what if I did get killed? What are my kids going to say about me? And so then I'm starting to go through all this stuff, and my head's just been pounding right in the back part of my mind. And, it goes on for a long time, but that night, and I have to tell this story, but that night, I finally were able to, I'm reunited with my kids. I'm home. I'm in my own bed. I've already taken a shower, my own shower. And, the first shower I had in Vegas after that event, I'm wiping all the stuff off my body, and it was nice to be home. And I lay down and I fall asleep and I wake back up and I'm back in that moment. I can smell it. I can hear it. I can hear the screams. I can hear everything. I'm back. I'm running towards someone calling for help. And, this is where I am a huge faith believer. And I feel like I wasn't alone that night. And an angel appeared over my right side as bullets were flying, left and right of me. And the angel's wings spread apart, and now bullets are flying off the angel's wings. And the angel's backing up towards the gunman, and I'm able to run out from coverage and go pick up this man and run him back out to Giles Street. And as I'm running, I'm seeing the angel follow me behind me with these bullets. That I'm grabbing my wife's leg. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm finally, now I'm up. I'm awake. I'm home. I'm safe. I'm in my own bed. I got my walls around me, and I take that shower the next morning, and all I can think about is like, there's something bigger here. I wasn't alone. I'm 6'5". Why wasn't I taken? I ran in so many times under gunfire. I was running. I can hear the bullets skipping near my boots on the turf. So all I can think about is, how do I start? Like, how can I tell my story? How can I help people? I want to be able to continue to help people get through their adversity. And so I ended up, going to church the next week, and this all has to do with my recovery. And we're back at church. And of course, now I sit in the far back of everything. I don't like being in the crowds. I don't want to be in the middle of things. So I sit with my back pretty much up against the wall where I can see everything in front of me. And Vanetta and I spoke about this yesterday a little bit. So I understand where law enforcement comes in and those that put themselves out in harm's way. Veterans, why they want their back up against the wall. And I've had a lot of outreach. One of my best friends, two of my best friends, also the former law enforcement. We're going to have hopefully one on the show talking about his stories of adversity, but they shared their stories with me. And so now I've got these 3 rocks. I call them my rocks, right? Because when I think of a rock, I think of something hard and stable and sturdy. And these guys are that way. And these people that became my rocks are people that I can talk to anytime. I can cry with, I can share my darkest fear with, my darkest memory, and they're going to be able to, like me with you, Chris, absorb it. I'm going to be able to take it, and I'm going to be able to help you continue to stand up. And they helped me stand up and walk tall. They were walking tall already for themselves. And then they helped me stand up and walk tall for myself with them. And, the road to, I knew I needed help. A friend of mine, Chad Vert, he's I think a captain up in Rockland, California, fire department. He called me, and this is a longtime childhood friend. And he said, Todd, he goes, I just saw your story. Are you okay? And we're talking on the phone, and he shares something with me. And I realized, like, there's so much hurt, no matter what, like whether you're a firefighter or like Vanetti, like you mentioned, you get yelled at, you get into a car accident. There's so many people that are hurt by something bad that's happened to them. And so he says, we're doing a lot with EMDR therapy right now. I want you to look that up. A lot of military using it, law enforcement. We have our firefighters doing it up here in Northern California. He said, look that up, because that would be the best type of therapy for you. And so I started researching EMDR, tried to find a therapist. The first one I went to, really nice person, but just nobody that I could literally open up to without putting that person into nightmare mode. So that wasn't going to work for me. And that took a lot for me because I'm not one that ever asks for help. I don't cry. I'm tough. I was raised that way. No blood, no foul. That's the way my dad was and is. And but so for me to start the journey of trying to find help, because I knew I needed to, for my kids, for my wife, for myself, I wanted to be able to start that. And that process took about 6 months until finally I was introduced to my angel, I call her, Diane Logren, up here in North Texas. And she had worked with a lot of military, worked with a couple people that actually were with us that night that live in the Dallas area. And I knew she could take it. And it was an instant connection with me and her. And she and I went through EMDR treatment for a good year plus together. Off and on. Vanetta, I did the paddles. So I did the vibration therapy. And we would, started with that a lot. And what EMDR to me, and I'll give the very brief version of it, not the medical or scientific, but basically the way it was described to me was, if you try to replay that movie, I'm playing it middle, start, end, all the different pieces are kind of all around, but I can remember certain moments. I remember yelling at a guy that night. I didn't remember why. Then it was pieced together on why I was yelling. I wanted that guy to get in that car with Rachel Parker and her two friends because it was a female driving. And for whatever reason, I needed, in my own mind, I wanted like some sort of male figure there too, to not that they needed protection by any means, but in my own head, like I wanted him to go, and he's like, oh, I'm not going to go. And I'm yelling at this guy. Like, do you understand like what's going on? And I didn't understand why I was yelling at this man, but then it was confirmed through Rachel's friend that told me, because I got to meet those girls in Huntington Beach, the two survivors, and they told me what had happened and why I was yelling at him. And I already knew that because of EMDR, because we had focused on that memory, and EMDR allowed me to take one little box, 1 minute of time, and start putting all those minutes together on a big, nice shelf. If you can imagine, little black boxes all stacked up in chronological order. I was able to put a lot of my boxes back in order to where I can now go from start to finish on what happened. And through each one of those minutes of time, man, it was exhausting. I cried. I was in a safe, very, very safe place with her. And it was amazing. And so, now I live a mission of always wanting to help others and talk, share. We got connected through Ryan, through ABCA and baseball. Vanetta and I were connected through baseball and her son and what it's done. And there's just a higher purpose that's at hand right now. I truly believe that's giving us a mission to try to help others. And you hear about all the shootings that are going on. We just had, I don't know what the number is. And I don't want to date it, but people need help, and they need this. And I'm willing to sacrifice everything I have to help somebody get through something. And maybe my story, what Vanetta's about to probably throw down, Chris, next week, we're going to listen to yours. I mean, an amazing testimony of just faith and walking tall for others in a time of adversity. Truly remarkable. And I was just happy to be there. I emotionally went from questioning why I did it and upset at myself to being extremely proud.
Yeah.
And especially when I would tell a story and I get law enforcement or somebody active military saying, hey, you know what? I gave up on therapy, but listening to your story, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back because you seem like you're pretty clear and I want to be that way. So I'm going to follow your lead. Great. Let's go. You call me. You have any issues? Call me. I'm there. Don't do something stupid to yourself. I will be there. Maybe not physically, but call me. Let's talk. I mean, this is what we get a chance to do, right? So
that's who we are. That's Todd, who you are, and Dr. LaRosa, who you are. We're here for each other. We're here for the folks that decide that we're worthwhile to listen to. And I hope as we grow this mission and this vision, more and more folks become inspired to walk tall for themselves and others. But as I said, Dr. LaRosa, I wanted to give you an opportunity to just talk about how impressive it is to hear what we just heard and the manner which we just heard it. So briefly, yeah, just talk about that, and then we'll turn on to what we're going to hear about next week.
There are so many aspects of impressive. I don't have enough time in the rest of the time that we have today to even go into it. Todd, it's more than fight or flight. It's the person that you are, that person that goes into overdrive, using that hypervigilance to go in there and help people. Going towards therapy, even when you didn't have a first good impression, when you're struggling and you're experiencing post-trauma, which is exactly what you were experiencing, for you to be brave enough to face that and search down the right therapist for yourself and work through this process is beyond impressive. We've talked yesterday a little bit about how people put so much into their physical health, and they do so for a variety of reasons, whether it's just to look better, sometimes to feel better, to have more energy, to lose weight, whatever else have you. And there's no shame in that. A society celebrates it. There's one commercial or web app or diet after another encouraging people to do this. But where is that for mental health? And our mental health is so critically important to the very core of our physical beings as well. We could deteriorate physically if our mental health deteriorates. We could do terrible things to ourselves as a result of not taking care of our mental health. And you realize that, and you did walk tall for yourself and for your family, for your loved ones, and everybody around you. And, you know, experiencing overwhelming emotion is not, it's not something to be shameful. It's not something to hide. Even myself, I'm in the therapeutic field, although counseling is not the way that I express my training at this point in time. You know, it's something that I can do, but the empathy and the connection that I feel very, very deeply for people and for your story, I just want you to know is real. And I commend, and I'm just grateful to know to you and you as well, Chris. I do believe that there's a higher power that joined us together in this mission. It's just not by chance that we're sitting here today going through all this with each other and walking tall for each other. You know, and to the therapy side of it, if we think about the variety of sensory experiences that you were going through during that trauma, that war that you experienced, and the mental processing side of things, we know sensory overload. We have a part of our brain called the RAS. It's like a relay station for processing all of our sensory input, what we hear, what we smell, what we, our kinesthetic, you know, sensations, you know, taste and touch, all these different things. And when you have an overwhelming situation like that and an inability to process it emotionally, then a lot of those experiences can become intertwined and fuzzy and incomplete and all those different things. And now the type of treatment that you went through, eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing, is a technique really that is supposed to, it's supposed to help you efficiently process those thoughts, memories, experiences. So once you efficiently process them, then you could approach them in a therapeutic sense. So when a person has anything related to a deep anxiety, a trauma, the technique is usually to find a way to cognitively process those situations and then receive treatment on how to de-escalate yourself, how to calm yourself, how to reprocess those experiences for yourself. And EMDR is like it's a fast, efficient way, if not fast, because we're not trying to cut any corners, but it's an efficient way for a person to be able to do that. So, you know, you went towards your circumstance and you said, hey, I want to tackle this, and I want to understand this. I want to be better for it. And everything that you said, you know, experiencing life differently, you know, the flowers, the trees, the life, you forgave yourself for putting yourself on the line and possibly not being there for your family, instead of beating yourself up for it. and increasing your possible anxiety or depression, you've understood and forgiven yourself for any aspect of that night. It's people do that, when they're anxious and when they're down. I could have done this, I should have done that. Maybe I could have helped this person differently, or maybe that was my fault. But we realize that these situations, they're bigger than us, right? We're not God, none of us are. But God lived through you to do whatever you could that night and for the rest of your life, as you're doing now. So you've taken every aspect of this most traumatic experience and turned it into something unbelievably, overwhelmingly positive. And here I am with you after we met in such an innocent way. You helping me with a baseball circumstance and your program that I was having trouble paying for.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get into that. Within future episodes.
Yeah.
We're going to hear more later on in our first season, if you will, Dr. LaRosa, about you as a person and your lifelong mission of learning and the dedication you've given to the brain, if you will. It's just so remarkable. So yeah, we're
and don't forget, Chris, you're going through EMDR right now too.
Yeah, I am actually.
Yeah.
It's so funny, real quick, like to hear, Todd, you talk about 6 months after coming home on October 2nd, you finally breaking down and coming to terms with your needs. And we're going to get into my circumstance and story next week. But I'm, 8 months into my journey at this point, and I had my breaking moment a month ago, which spawned Walking Tall, and the craziness of all this. But yes, in fact, I have done my first session of EMDR with my therapist, who's also my angel, and I'll tell us all about her later on in the next episode. But yeah, I've been through one extensive session where I was able to focus on 3 snippets of my circumstance and my event. And I never realized how emotional I could be just by thinking of something. But the beauty of EMDR and what it's done for me, and what I'll tell later on, is I now can ration with those 3 snippets of my experience differently. And I say better only because when I think of them or if I talk about them, I don't find myself as worked up any longer. But if I think about episodes 4, 5, 6, 7, 500, I get worked up, right? So I'll be able to express a little bit more next week about my experience in EMDR, but I am going through it. And the truth of the matter is, if not for this podcast, I can't say that I would have been that open to it at this point in my experience. And so I want to thank you both for providing me a platform to heal myself and giving me information to do that. But most importantly, thank you for being on my team and our team as we attempt to do this for others. So before we sign off, just want to say to everybody, tune in next week as we hear a similar experience of which I had as Todd's on July 4th, 2022, where I was called to walk tall for several hours for myself and many others, serving as the co-chair of the Highland Park Parade, where a mass shooting occurred. 7 lost their lives, many more were physically injured, and thousands more mentally injured, including myself. So I will do as Todd did and walk tall for us and you, telling my story and encouraging you to seek the help you may find you need after listening to us or working with us. But Todd, I just want to say one more time, thank you so much. What you just did for us and our listeners is remarkable. It's the epitome of walking tall. It's who we are as a group, and certainly who you are as a person. So I want to say thank you to you, and allow you to say goodbye before we do the same to Dr. LaRosa.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chris, and Vanetta. Again, I was not happy to share my story, but I knew it was part of what we needed to tell to really get this thing going. And we're going to listen to something that's really hard. That's going to be hard for you to talk about. And I'm 5 years plus into my journey, my understanding of things. You're really fresh. So we're going to be there for you. We're going to walk tall with you and for you next week as you share your story. And we're going to continue to be there with you because, like at Route 91, at the end of it, people were sending off, building hats and shirts and showing strength. One of the sayings on the back of this coin that was delivered to people was, you never know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice. Right. And walk tall, be strong, love wins. Country strong in my choice because I like country.
I caught that with those cowboy boots and cowboy hats.
Yeah. I'm going to go have a great day, and I'm going to walk tall and with a lot of love and have some smiles later on. So I want you guys to do the same.
Thank you for walking tall, showing your vulnerability today, your compassion for Todd and his story and his recovery, and your willingness to continue to join us on this journey. I just can't thank you enough as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody tune in next week. I'm going to
just
make myself vulnerable. You want to say something? Go ahead, Doctor.
I just want to say super, super quick that your creativity is unmatched from, I think, anyone I've ever met. For you to have this brainchild, this walking tall, and everything that you've created around it so soon after everything that you have gone through, you're the driving force behind a lot of this. And you and Todd are, I really just, I joined into this circle by no grand plan of mine. This was God bringing me to you to do whatever I can. And I'm just so incredibly impressed and touched by both of you, and the strength and resilience that you have to walk tall for everyone else is going to be an example for the community at large. And I just look forward to, more of our time together. Yeah,
I feel the exact same. I know, Todd, you do as well. So
make a good team.
Make a good team. All right, everybody, walk tall. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. Walk tall.
Walk tall, everybody.
Walk tall. All right.